This is Professor Imler, and I'm here to talk through our readings. This first one is Are You Moral? From Thorn, Abigail Thorn. And in this video, we look at the issue of we seem to be both moral beings, we seem to be reasoning beings, and what are our motivations for trying to reason well or being moral, and what if we disagree? Anyway, lots of good discussion here. What do we do whenever we have a uncomfortable conclusion to our argumentation? Do we bite the bullet, or do we revisit things? All of these issues are discussed and more in this video, Are You Moral? And it picks up off of the video that we looked at last time. And if you recall, kind of ended with this question of what about when morality and motivation clash? And then they try to kind of work that out, looking at some major philosophers that have contributed to this here. So this will set up the problem, and this will set up some possible solutions or how we've been dealing with it in the past, which might help us know how to deal with it now. Okay, great little video. Leave comments, ask questions. Next one. I think this is one of the most important readings in the course. Let me pull up my notes on it. Informal logic. So the first thing, here are just some questions that it deals with. Let's just kind of walk through them. So one of the ideas here is our thinking, again, like we said earlier, doesn't come out of a vacuum. If I am in an environment where the oxygen levels are very, very low, I might not be able to think clearly, right? Or not breathe, right? I need to have a good breathing environment to breathe well. So we need a good intellectual environment to increase the possibility of us thinking well. Or at least it allows us to, maybe this is a better way to say it, to look around and go, what is keeping me from thinking well? And it can be anything from physical misery, mental misery, could be environmental issues like there is a loud banging noise and I cannot hear myself think. I mean, that's a bit. Or how are people talking about ideas? Do you have access to books? All kinds of stuff. They'll talk about that. This next issue, I think is really interesting, is think about all of the ways we use the B word, bias, right? It's important to not be biased, but do we use bias when we shouldn't sometimes? Like, I have a point of view. I have a point of view for reasons. Is that a bias, or is that just thinking something about the world, right? And when we add up everything that we think about the world, and the language we use to describe it, the way we kind of order it in our head to make sense of everything and our place in it, how do I describe differences between me and you, my people, your people, my religion, this other religion, this time period, other time period? Are they just biased? Because bias isn't a neutral word. It means, or at least it has the impact of, this is not a legitimate way to think and talk about how to think about this, because you're just biased, right? So we want to be able to distinguish bias from points of view that people have for reasons, or even that kind of collective interpretation of it all, which is very different from bias, because bias is when you take a reading of something and you refuse to listen to other readings or evidence in order to keep your current ideas, right? With the worldview, it is kind of like, it's not just one puzzle piece, it's the entire puzzle fitting together. And so there, it's this kind of interpretive whole, and it's the way you read everything, and it's how you honestly read and engage stuff, which is just different than being biased. Think about using bad grammar versus speaking different languages. That's the difference between worldview and being biased. And you and I can have different languages and still be just fine, good people trying to figure out the world and be successful in it. So maybe the case is with worldviews. Maybe not all of them are just fine, but maybe there's multiple ones that are reasonable. Okay, so from there, this importance on worldview, I want to highlight framing languages and how they can limit us. Sometimes talk about bounded inquiry, but here it is kind of the very ideas and the way I even talk about the vocabulary I use can really impact how we think about things, or what we can't think about, or it doesn't even occur to us to think about it. Then we have this issue on questions, which is fantastic. And the thing about questions is, sure, there might not be any dumb questions, meaning if you don't understand something, go ahead and want to and try and ask and go from there. You might find that you're very ignorant, but hey, isn't that okay? I want to know when I'm ignorant, and I want to know if ignorance is just not knowing stuff, well, of course I'm going to be ignorant until I have the opportunity and resources to learn, right? So, I mean, in that sense, there are no dumb questions. Are there bad ones? There are ones that are not helpful. And so the goal is to say, well, let's think of the good questions to ask, the helpful ones. Because you can do, right, rhetorical, leading, loaded, obstructionist questions that are designed to not solve the problem honestly. And how to describe this next bit. You probably have some specialized or in-depth knowledge of something. Could be video games, could be construction, could be a Japanese manga anime series, could be Star Wars, Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica, Cosmere series, just whatever, right? Just lost my train of thought. The issue of what are the questions to ask here. You find once you get into a topic that not every question, not like doesn't need to be asked, but like isn't helpful. They kind of miss the point of what's going on. So anyway, this issue of, hey, what are good questions? How do we ask them, etc. But really, this last bit, this value program, is pretty important. So make sure to read through that. And also look for limit situations and what happens afterwards. So I forget where it is in this reading. It's somewhere. I need to turn off my highlighter. It's somewhere in here. But one thing we want to think about is sometimes our worldviews run out of power. They're not able to answer the questions that are in front of us. So what do you do? And what happens whenever you kind of run up against a situation that you cannot explain? People talk about this as a limit situation. I think that's kind of an awkward term, but that notion of, hey, my framework, my ways of understanding the world just don't fit the questions and the issues. Think about a person who believes in a flat earth, or that the earth is in the center of solar system or universe. If they have that view, it might explain the horizon, it might explain different things. But once you start to shoot off of the earth, you realize that something else is going on, and there are other questions to ask. Oh, like you have a new context. Anyway, you sort of replace a language for another one. If your old ways of talking about the world don't work and you find ones that are more helpful, go with those. Anyway, let's move on to the next reading. These next two I'll kind of do together. Okay, so the first one is chapters 2 and 3 from this fantastic tiny little book, Rulebook for Arguments. And this is just, let me pull my notes for these up. So here's an outline. In the first couple of chapters, here, hey, what is an argument? What are the major components? So, here, just kind of talk through them. Hey, all an argument is we're saying something, a conclusion, and we have reasons for it, right? We call those premises, right? And so we want our premises to support and connect to our conclusion. Okay, how do we do that? You're going to be writing an argument paper. Now, you do arguments all the time, right? We talked about that. But what are some good, helpful rules, right? And so, first thing is to talk like a human. Don't overthink it. Remember, to make an argument is you're proposing something that you want another person to consider and adopt if it's good enough. So, talk like a human. Okay, next one. You need to know what you're talking about, and you need to show your work. If I say my dog's made out of cheese, do you believe me? No. I would need to demonstrate that. I would need to show it, right? So what would that require? So to have a good argument, you have to have a good, solid foundation of true things you're saying. And so that's going to take, well, think about your assignment, the annotated bibliography you do in this class. Got to know what you're talking about. You got to read. Now, once you do that, you can reference the readings. You can build upon it. Amazing foundation. So get into the books. Now, the next bit is, again, you're talking to humans. I don't have 72 hours to have you just kind of wander through an argument, blathering on. Get to the point. Give me your reasons. And keep it sharp. You're not trying to get to a word count. Rather, you're wanting to make a good argument. So do that. I think there's a sporting event somewhere. I think I just heard hoops and hollers from the high school area. Okay, next bit. Build on substance. Yeah, man, we're here to do intellectual work. We're not here to just get people to agree with us. That's actually, we'll talk about this later, that's actually bullshit. And so we want to avoid bullshit giving the appearance of good reasoning. We want to have good, solid reasoning. And so we'll have to learn to avoid emotional arguments that only have emotion in them, or have other kinds of major flaws. We need to use consistent terms in our arguments. If I'm moving between similar terms for the same thing, one, do you know I'm talking about the same thing throughout your argument? And two, do you mean the same thing with that term, or are you slightly changing the meaning when you shift to a similar but different in an important way term? Okay. The next bit, this is the other reading that's part of this, is chapter 3. Now I got some dogs barking. This has to do with analogy. And so here, the key thing is, see, the little phrase is, we need to reason in similar ways in similar cases. So what an analogy does is it presents case 1. Then it says there's case 2. They're the same in some important way. And then, on the basis of that equality, if we see X, let me move this. If we see X in case 1, Well, maybe that will tell us something about X in case 2, right? So we're reasoning by like cases. If the cases are similar enough, then it works. If it's not, it doesn't work. But you actually have to show that, not just say, oh, this is different, therefore I don't have to think. Because that's the key. We do not want to escape thinking. We want to go ahead and do it. And we'll find that a lot of objections, while they seem to be thinking, are actually just ways of saying, I don't have to consider that. And so one of the ways students will critique analogies that just isn't all that helpful at the beginning is to say, oh, well, because a violinist is different than a fetus, you cannot use the famous violinist case to talk about this issue of abortion. If the cases are, again, you'd have to kind of know the case for me to say much more about it, but and be too much to do here. So a violinist is nothing. It's not the same thing as a 6-week-old fetus, but in the analogy, it's something you like. It's something that we don't want to get rid of. But in the analogy, you're hooked up to both against your will in her discussion of it. And so, in that sense, they might like the case might be structurally similar, even though it is different. That's not all that helpful of a discussion there, but hopefully you kind of get what I'm asking, or it's so late in the video you're not watching anymore. Okay, so what I want to highlight there is the structural similarities, right? If the structure is similar, then perhaps we should reason similar in those same cases, in the similar cases. Similar reasoning, similar cases. My example was terrible. Okay, so with that said, hop in here, get to reading, get to talking about these things, start thinking about how they might apply for your paper or in your community, those things. But then also really, when it comes to this reading, where do you see examples of these things? That might be really helpful. Okay, so with that said, I will talk to you all later. I wonder if I can show my dog here. Hey, Wilf! Wilf! Hey, buddy. Yeah. He's a Wheaton Terrier. Okay, that's it.